Why do I struggle with boundaries and what is it costing my health? Now, I'm sure that you've asked yourself, why do I struggle with my boundaries? A lot, but you may not have realized that it is costing you your health. So let me explain. So, if you've always struggled to say no, if you feel other people's emotions as strongly as your own, if you end up exhausted after being around certain people or in certain environments without being able to explain why, then this video is going to make a lot of sense. Poor boundaries are not a personality trait. They are a program. They are in your brain, your subconscious brain, and they have a cost that most people just haven't connected. And that is to the things that are happening in their health. Okay. So what boundaries actually are. They're not walls, they're not aggression, they're not selfishness, they're not stubbornness. A boundary is simply that line that distinguishes where you end and another person begins, whether that's energetically, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So think about it. Your skin is the biggest boundary you have. It delineates where you end. Okay, so just think about that. So without that boundary, without that line, you absorb everything and you get absorbed into everything. Other people's emotions, energy, stress, opinions, even their physical symptoms. You know, there's a reason why when women all live under the same roof, their periods go into the same cycle, so they get their period all at the same time. Okay, they synchronize. Okay. So, in spiritual and healing work, this is what creates the psychic sponge pattern in highly sensitive people, so empaths like you and I. You pick up what is in the room before you've even registered it consciously. In everyday relationships, it means other people's moods become your responsibility to fix. If you feel someone's angry, you want to make them happy. If someone's sad, you want to lift them up. If somebody's hurting, you want to salve that wound. And it's exhausting, okay? So at work, maybe it means you carry what shouldn't be yours to carry. Obviously, if you've got a family, some of that is there to be carried by you, but not all of it. There is a limit, okay? So the line between you in the world is way too permeable and everything gets through. It's like having a coat on that's not rainproof and it's bucketing down, okay? It's not going to work. So, where boundary difficulties actually come from are almost always rooted in your early experiences. Now, that's not set in stone because this could have been behavior that was created through a bully or a difficult partner and stuff like that. Okay, so it's not always, but most of the time. So, have you been raised in a family system where your needs were secondary to someone else's? Now, this doesn't mean that it was nasty. Maybe you had a sibling who was unwell. And maybe that meant that you had to just let them have all the attention. Or maybe you had an ill parent and that meant that they weren't there for you. You had to be there for them. And so when we are managing other people's emotional state, other people's feelings unconsciously become our job to regulate. That's what we believe, okay? It's not true, but we believe it to be true. So if you had a home environment where having needs was jolly inconvenient to anybody else, and this is definitely where a narcissist parent comes in, and when you're in that situation, it's very easy to learn that the only safe way to exist in that environment is to be permeable, is to give in. Okay. Maybe you've got the martyr as a parent and you might say, oh no, I can't babysit. I've got to go out. You're going to have to get someone else to babysit my brother and sister. Oh, well, I only have to go to work because I've got to put food on the table. And, if you didn't live here, I wouldn't have that extra cost. So, I really need you to babysit. And you go, all right then. So that guilt tripping can erode your boundaries. And they know it's going to work because they know that you're a nice person. Okay. So when we let others in and we absorb, accommodate, and manage, because that's what kept the peace with that person. And if you put your foot down and said no, you'd probably get something like, oh, you're so selfish. All you do is think of yourself. And it's like, hang on a minute. It's not my children. I didn't have them. Okay. So think about the environment you grew up in and think about where that fits. It can be so different. The examples I've given are not finite. So there might be other things like you had elderly grandparents living with you, and maybe they got all the time and energy and you didn't. Okay. So again, it's not abusive. It's not trauma as in someone's done something really horrible to you, but that low level emotional absence can be really important. Okay, so just think outside the box. Okay, don't sit and think, oh well, I don't fit with what she's saying. Just think about how those rules apply to you. So in that scenario, a child may grow up and carry the same patterns into every relationship, personal, work, friendships, etc., every workplace, every healing session, and even in spiritual development. If that boundary has never been formed because the early environment never allowed it to, that's going to be a problem. Now, I always say that whatever's going on in your human life is going to show up in your spiritual life and vice versa. So let me talk about how poor boundaries show up in the body and in your spiritual life. So in the body, it could be autoimmune conditions. These evolve the immune system and we lose the ability to distinguish self from non-self. And that mirrors exactly what is going on with a poor boundary, because when it's emotional or energetic, things like chronic fatigue come in. When we absorb other people's energy and emotions, it is exhausting in a way that rest is just not going to fix. So you have to do things to counteract it. Okay. So things like fibromyalgia is the body putting a boundary in place because you're not. Okay. Gut issues, because the gut is the seat of the instinct. And when you're chronically overriding your own gut feeling so that you can manage everyone else, your gut is going to reflect it. So do you have IBS? And now that might be constipation as well as upset stomach. It's not always upset stomach. A lot of people think that IBS is just that you have to keep going to the loo a lot. It can be the opposite. Okay. Now, in your spiritual life, and we are all spiritual, even if we're not doing a lot with that, empaths and highly sensitive people, even not sensible, sensitive people, with boundary difficulties often take on other people's physical symptoms during a healing session or during a reading. Now, that happens to me, but it literally goes as soon as the other person has said, yes, I can take that my dad died with a heart condition, or yes, I do have a dodgy knee. Okay, but if they stay with me, that would be because of a bad boundary or a poor boundary. They struggle to distinguish their own intuitive signals from what they have absorbed from the people around them. Spiritual development will get blocked, not because their gifts aren't there, but because the channel's flooded with other people's rubbish. That's like having a really nice corridor from your front door to your lounge, but you can't get through it because everyone's left all their coats and shoes and bags and everything, and it's just an absolute mess. So you have to think about this in simple terms, in terms that help you understand it. Okay. Now, also, if you've got boundary issues, you might get visits from spirit at 3 a.m. giving you messages. And you might think, oh God, I don't know what to do with that. It's ruining my sleep. Well, you have to have a strong boundary with your guides, and you have to say to them, I don't want messages at 3 a.m. I wouldn't let my boss call me at 3 a.m. So I'm not letting you come with a message at 3 a.m. But then you do need to give some space over to that need, which is where the meditation and the development circle comes in. Because you can say, I only want you to come when I'm in development circle or when I'm meditating. So strong boundaries. Okay. So why can't you just decide to have better boundaries? Because it sounds really obvious, doesn't it? Okay, it's not rocket science. But a boundary is not a skill, it's not a conscious decision. It is a felt sense of where you end and where others begin. And if that felt sense was never developed because your early environment didn't allow for it, no amount of reading about boundaries and assertiveness and willpower is going to help you. You can tell yourself that you have the right to say no. You can still feel your stomach drop when you try to say it. But because the nervous system believes that boundary setting is genuinely dangerous for you, it considers it to be up there with the saber-toothed tiger, then it will cost you love, approval, it will cost you safety, connection. That belief has been formed in a specific moment, in a specific environment, when you were old enough to not question it. You just did as you were told, or you just learned. The same as you watch somebody eating and you go, hey, I want to try that. And you grab a fork and you copy your parents and everyone thinks it's hysterical. Or if they're smoking, you see kids replicating and mimicking, because that's how we learn. Okay, so you can learn because you've just been shown that that's the way. You can learn because you might have had a parent that did it and you learned that that was the right way to do it, and now you've learned that that's not serving you. So, as I say, it's not black and white. There's many different ways. Okay, so what we have to do is change the original experience, and then the boundary becomes natural rather than an effort. And that's where the work is. Okay, so if this video has landed for you in any area of your life, in multiple areas of your life, whether that is your health, your relationships, your spiritual practice, or even all three, I have a free guide that goes deeper. The link is in the comments below. And if you are ready to find the original root of where your boundary pattern started, then I have the healing pathway, and it is built exactly around this kind of work. We will find the root together and clear it. So download the guide, have a read, see what resonates, have those aha moments, and then let's talk. Okay, drop me your comments below. I love to hear from people, and I do reply personally. I don't have a PA, I don't have a VA. It's all coming from me. Okay, so it might not be instant, but I will reply. Okay.